What's up, guys? It's Justin from EliteLifeNutrition.com, and you're listening to the Elite Life Podcast. In today's episode, I want to cover something a little bit different, something that actually we do cover from time to time, but we haven't covered enough, I feel like, lately, and that is success and actually, consequently, failure. And along those lines, mindset and how you look at those two types of things. And it actually comes from a very different source than what you may be used to, what I'm used to, even in fact. So this episode is inspired by a very unique source that I heard from just a couple of nights ago, and I think it's going to surprise you a little bit, but it's incredibly profound, and I think the point is very well worth sharing in this episode. But before I do that, before I jump into the details of success and failure, I do want to mention really quickly that we are doing as much episodes as possible. Sometimes we get a little behind, like this week, had the stomach flu, could only do 2 instead of 3. But going forward, we're probably going to stick with the 3 as much as we can. And now if something pops up when we can't do the 3, we're going to do obviously the 2. And also, I want to get your feedback on how you're liking the content. Are you liking the 3 episodes a week? Would you rather see 2 a week? Would you rather go back to the 1 a week format, which was traditional with the Elite Man podcast, Elite Life podcast now, where we did once a week, most of them interviews. But going forward, we had to actually put some of the interviews on the back burner because of some of the things that popped up in the last few weeks, but we have a bunch of interviews lined up. So next week, the following week, we have a ton of interviews lined up, including these shorter episodes as well. So we're going to do the interviews, continue to do those interviews. Those haven't gone anywhere. We just had to take a little bit of a break on being able to record some of those guests. But those are going to continue to stay no matter what, either way. But do you guys like 1 episode a week? Do you prefer 2? Do you prefer 3, like the way we've been doing it? Or would you prefer just keeping it short and sweet? Like if we do 1 episode a week, they're obviously a lot longer. If we do 2 a week, it's kind of in the middle. If you do 3 a week, they're a little shorter, but you get more of a variety of topics covered that way, which is kind of what I thought going forward would be the best case. But some emails I've gotten, some feedback likes the new format. Some of the emails I've gotten back doesn't really like the new format as much. They prefer more of the longer episodes, and it's because they can't get to all the episodes, it seems like. So it's kind of like they're skipping some things, whereas before they would get every episode. And so I'm open to feedback. I've heard some kind of mixed reviews. Some people love the new format this way, where they're getting so much content. Some people think it's like a little bit overwhelming. So if that's the case, I can dial it back a little bit and go to maybe 2. Probably not 1, because I feel like 1 was just too long of a break in between content. Although we're going to be pumping out a ton of YouTube videos, so maybe that would help fill the void. But I'm definitely open to the idea of hearing your feedback. So shoot me an email, justin@elitemanmagazine.com or info@elitelifenutrition.com. That email of Justin is always still going to be open, as well as you can always DM us on Instagram, Justin @JustinStanstrom or Elite Life Nutrition. Probably the best way to get a hold of us. But yeah, let me know your thoughts. Shoot me an email, shoot me a DM, and let me know what you're thinking in terms of what you prefer best going forward. Again, if we do keep it at 3 episodes, it's not going to mean that we're not going to do any of the interviews. We're going to continue to do those interviews going forward regardless. But we might dial back on some of the shorter episodes if it's easier to digest, more of like, 1 episode of that and then 1 episode of the interviews a week. If it's a little easier for you guys to do 2 instead of 3, let me know, because it actually is probably a lot easier for me to do it that way. But I want to make it best for you guys. So just let me know. I'm always open to hearing these ideas and hearing the feedback. But with that out of the way, let's dive into what I want to talk about today. And as I mentioned, this inspiration for this episode came from a very unlikely source. And that is, believe it or not, I'm sitting there watching. I'll be honest with you, I don't watch much sports these days at all. I talked about it the last episode. I love MMA. I watch all the big UFC ones, all the big pay-per-views, some of the fight nights. I catch as much of it as I can. I'm super busy these days, but I do try to catch as much UFC, the big ones anyways. I don't watch the prelims that much. I don't watch the smaller ones. But the big fights, I try to watch that as much as possible because I am such a big fan. I mean, I was watching this when it was Fedor, and it was Chuck Liddell, and it was Vanderlei Silva and Dan Henderson and Mark Coleman and those, and Matt Hughes, and even this is actually a little before GSP really blew up, but GSP, even you could throw him in there. BJ Penn, I mean all these guys. I was actually training at a gym. I just started training at a gym boxing when Joe Lazon was on the Ultimate Fighter. He was a Bridgewater guy, Bridgewater Mass guy. He first went on to the Ultimate Fighter, and I was actually at the same gym as him when I first started boxing. He wasn't fully at that gym, but he'd come to the gym regularly to get some of the boxing training in. And he had just been on the show. I think they had just filmed it, or he was just going on the show to be filmed. But I remember coming home from the gym a bunch of times and putting the Spike TV on it and actually watching the Ultimate Fighter with Joe Lazon. So I mean that takes you way back as well. That was when I was about 16, 17. But yeah, so I love MMA, but I used to love the regular mainstream sports. I used to love baseball and football and basketball, but I don't really watch much of it these days. I do watch a little football still. I will watch the Patriots most times, but basketball I rarely follow, and baseball I never watch. It's too boring for me these days. But I'm sitting there, and this clip pops up on the TV the other day as I'm kind of, just have a few minutes to spare, and this guy, I actually know this guy's name. I don't want to sound like I don't know his name, but this basketball player pops up and he starts talking, and it's like immediately you're drawn to what he's saying because it's so like instantly profound. It's like it kind of just like there's times when you're talking to certain people or you hear certain people talking, and it sort of breaks the script. It breaks the pattern of traditional speech, and because it was so different than what you're used to hearing, you kind of like instantly stop and you start like actually really listening to what this guy's saying. So anyways, I'm sitting there, and this guy comes on the TV, and I was doing something else, but it was in the background, as it was kind of like, one of the background things you put on the TV just to have some background noise. And all of a sudden he starts talking. I like immediately stop what I'm doing and start paying attention. And it turns out it's this guy named, who you probably heard of, Giannis Antetokounmpo, the guy from the Milwaukee Bucks. And I know he's one of the best players. I know he's a perennial MVP guy. He's one of the best NBA players in the league. But I don't know much about him other than that. I have never actually heard the man speak until the other day, a couple nights ago. So I didn't even know what his voice sounded like. And I don't even know if he's always this profound, although I doubt it. I do think he's probably a smart guy, but I don't think he's ever like this on the dial with stuff. But maybe he is, but in any event, he starts talking, and I guess the Bucks, the team he's on, Milwaukee Bucks, just got eliminated from the playoffs. And the reporter is asked, this is like a post-game press conference, the reporter is asking him, do you consider this season a failure? And Giannis, I don't know how to say it. I think it's Giannis. I think it's Giannis actually, but it's spelled out Giannis. And I actually had a friend, I think he's from Greece too, I'm pretty sure. I actually had a friend from Greece named Giannis as well, or we called him Yanni for short. So I think it's Yanni. And he was a great guy. A few years back, I used to hang around him. But so here's this guy Giannis, and he at first he's getting very defensive with the question, and the reporter asks him, you feel like a failure basically, and he's like, you asked me this question last year, why are you asking me this again? And then like so he kind of like stops himself, like, so he does a lot of things that are very impressive, but one of the things he does that is very mature, very impressive, is in the beginning he's very defensive with that question, Giannis, and then he stops himself. And then he like catches himself from going down that track of being defensive and angry and attacking this reporter. And he even says, he kind of like apologizes. He's like, essentially like, oh, I don't mean to attack you. This isn't nothing personal. I just like, you kind of caught me off guard with the question. But like, no, I don't feel like a failure. Like the answer to your question is no. I absolutely do not feel like a failure. Yeah, we just got bounced, from the first round of the playoffs, and I guess they were like the number one seed. They were the favorites to basically win the championship. But Giannis is like, I don't feel like a failure. You asked me this question last year, and I hate to be so like direct at you, but of course I don't feel like a failure. Here I am playing a game that I love, and I got all the. He's not talking like in a braggadocious way. He's not saying, but he's like basically saying like I have all the money I need. I get to provide for my family. I'm playing the game that I love. How could I possibly feel like a failure? He's like, he's talking about, I think he was from Greece because he's saying some of these things. He's like referencing how poor he was. He's like, I come from nothing, like dirt poor back in Greece. You know, I had literally nothing. And look at me today. You know, I'm successful. I can provide for my family. I can take care of them. I can spend time with them. We have everything we need. We don't have to like worry about food, about being hungry. And you're asking me about losing a playoff game and getting bounced from the playoffs. He's like, this isn't about that. How could I possibly feel like a failure when I have so much and I come from so little? And then he also said something to the effect of like, look at Michael Jordan, who played about 15 seasons in the NBA, considered by far to be the greatest NBA player of all time, by many, by most people, to be the greatest NBA basketball player of all time. It's still just an iconic, when you think of the greatest sports athletes in American history and world history, Michael Jordan is at the top of the list. If he's not one, you know, he's number 2 or 3 of all-time athletes, all-time people that have laced up the boots, laced up the, you know, the cleats, played any type of high-level sport. Michael Jordan is at the echelon of those players. And he says, you know, Jordan played 15 seasons. He only won 6 championships. Do you think he considers 9 years out of that 15 failures because he didn't win those? And he's talking about every time we lose this, like a playoff game, every time we get bounced out, it's just a way for us to learn, a way for us to grow, a way for us to progress, go back to the drawing board, fix whatever we did wrong, and, you know, come back stronger next year. But even if we don't win next year, we get to go back and do the same thing and regroup, and we have fun along the way, and we learn things along the way, and we spend time with our friends, and we build these, you know, connections and bonds. And I'm paraphrasing essentially, but he's talking about all these important things aside from just that one thing of winning. And yeah, winning is incredibly important, especially when you're getting paid tens of millions of dollars to do that one thing and to bring home championships. But I think a lot of people, not just the basketball players, but I think a lot of people, he wasn't just speaking to basketball players specifically. He even mentioned something about, you know, about some other people in life, throughout life, being successful, even when they don't reach the pinnacle of whatever they're trying to reach. And that's really the biggest take home from this whole message. No matter where you are in life, you don't have to always hit that high level goal. And you don't have to be judged by other people on the outside for hitting or not hitting that high level goal. Success really comes down to how you view it, your perspective on it. You cannot be a failure if you don't think you're a failure in your own mind. If you're reaching, and you won't think you're a failure in your own mind if you're going after these things in life. Now, if you don't achieve certain things and you know you're not putting in the effort, you know you're not actually doing the best that you can, you're going to feel like shit. You're going to feel like a failure. But you can't possibly feel like a failure in life, no matter what you do, if you're giving it your all and you're going after these things that you want to achieve. And that's really what this guy was saying. Really, really profound message, really incredible takeaway. And it came from a basketball player. You know, it was really mind-blowing to hear this guy talk about this for a couple, it was really just a couple of minutes, but it was a really profound, beautiful, eloquent way to put a speech and a cap on this guy's end of his season. It was a great message, and I wanted to share that with you guys today, that no matter what you do in life, if you're giving it your all, if you're enjoying the journey, if you're enjoying the process, if you're trying your hardest and you're making connections and building friendships and taking care of your family, how could you possibly ever be a failure in anyone's mind, but especially in your own? Some people might look at you and think, you know, that guy doesn't have that car, or he doesn't have a mansion, or he doesn't have $1 million in his bank account. But if none of that stuff matters to you, if you know you're going after your life and you know you're doing the things you want to do in your life to be successful and happy, that's all that really matters. And you can never be a failure. But that's it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Go to elitelifenutrition.com for the best supplements in the world. And again, like I mentioned earlier, we will be back next week and going forward with a ton of new content and a bunch of new interviews coming up. And let me know how much episodes you want to have me do going forward. 2, 3, is it 1, is it 5, is it 10 a week? Let me know. I appreciate the feedback and also the reviews. If you can leave a review on iTunes, really appreciate that as well. Take care. Talk to you soon.